So a very good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar focused around automation and AI for housing associations. Now, housing associations are a perfect type of business to benefit from the advances in AI and process automation. I'm Chris Porter. I'm the CEO of NexBotix, and I've got my colleague with me, Chris, too. Would you like to introduce yourself, Chris?
It's Chris Parker. I'm a senior consultant at NexBotix. Very happy to be with you this morning.
Perfect. So we're recording this event so we can put it on replay to anyone that wasn't able to attend today. So just in terms of the agenda, so really what we're going to focus on is a kind of sharp, punchy event today, keeping it to 30 minutes. A couple of key areas we're going to be looking at, some specific process automations for the housing sector, an introduction to accounts payable, case study of a housing sector organisation, and then we'll talk about how we can help you to start your automation journey if you haven't done already so far. If you have any questions, then please do drop your Q&A in the chat. So there's a Q&A box at the top. Just click on that, pop a question in there, and then we'll get to those at the end of the session. But first of all, I'll hand you off to Chris to kick off the first session.
Thank you very much. So we want to talk about the business challenges here. Now, naturally, housing providers face a lot of the same universal challenges that most other industries face. As volumes increase, processes can become very costly. This can lead to backlogs in work and very high error rates, especially when we're talking about those very manual, repetitive processes that occur in high volumes. And all of that has a direct impact on retention and recruitment, which has been an expressed issue for a lot of our housing clients. But you also face a lot of industry-specific challenges. Increased demand for housing is putting a strain on associations who need to meet this increased demand at current capacity, whilst continuing to offer adequate lettings to tenants suffering from the cost of living crisis. Now, when you couple the strain of increased volumes against the progressively stringent regulatory landscape, especially related to consumer regulations and transparency over the movement and application of data, it is unsurprising that associations are experiencing a huge strain within the back office, resulting in process lag, backlogs of work, and additional costs. It is therefore also unsurprising that boards are now focused on cost reduction as well as cost optimization, with, according to Strategy Forum, roughly 50% of all housing providers in the UK now aligning budget for AI-driven process automation projects, and many more showing lots of interest. Go to the next slide, please. So on this slide, we have highlighted some commonly automated use cases within housing associations. We have a lot of experience automating processes within the lettings team, for example, which would include background checks, drafting and sending tenancy agreements, saving documents and emails into a document management system, setting up tenancies on your back office systems, interacting with council websites to process tenancies, upload medical information when necessary, and so on. But the majority of our work usually starts within finance and HR departments, as this is where the majority of the high volume, manual, repetitive processes lie. So within finance, you will see lots of work around accounts payable and receivable, bank reconciliation, credit control, etc. And within HR, we target processes like payroll and joiners, movers, leavers. But do keep in mind that this technology is industry and department agnostic. If you have a repetitive manual process that occurs at relatively high volumes and has data as an input and an output, then you likely have an excellent candidate process for automation. So I'm going to hand back to Chris now to take you through a very common use case for NexBotix.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Chris. And yes, so as Chris has mentioned, finance processes are very much lend themselves well to automation, and accounts payable, invoice processing is a very, very common process. I think pretty much something like 80% plus of our clients all have invoice processing as one of their automated processes. So this little diagram here just gives you a simple view on how it works from an end-to-end perspective. So on the left-hand side, you'll see source invoices. So essentially, this is where we pick up the invoices. This could be from a file share, could be from an email inbox, could be from any source where the actual invoices come into. So we have pre-built connectors that go and connect to all those environments and pick off those attachments that are coming in. And of course, in the middle here, the important bit is actually extracting the right data so that you can actually ensure you deliver the information from the invoice into your finance system and into your process. So we have AI assisted OCR, which extracts all of the invoice information from the particular invoices themselves. And then we apply lots of different logic and rules at this point. So it might be we match the data to purchase order data in your finance system. It could be that we're looking for specific values, specific line items, making sure goods have been delivered, and then actually ensuring that the invoices are approved before perhaps going into the finance system. So all of those elements can be completely tailored and customized to your particular process. And then on the right hand side there, the actual invoices themselves. So once we've done all that matching, we've got all the right data, we're then going to process them into the downstream finance software. And that could be a multitude of different software packages, different systems. We can link directly into that system via an API. So we're going into the database, straight into the back end of the system, or actually the bots can actually act like a human and go into what I call the front door, going kind of putting a username password in and going through different menu structures exactly the same as a human would. So complete flexibility in terms of how we implement all the business logic and business rules that you have for your process. So if we now move on and just talk about a particular use case in the housing association environment. So Popular Harker are one of our housing clients, pretty large association based in East London, got around 10,000 homes under their environment. In fact, they're probably going to be growing out from that fairly soon as well. And they had a particular issue with the suppliers that were effectively doing a lot of the work supporting, leaks, damages, issues, maintenance issues in the properties that they manage. And for these individuals, they were sending in spurious invoices at different times, different dates, different formats. So quite a complex set of invoices from these local contractors, and around about 2,500 a month. So this was taking a huge amount of time for the team to process manually, a team of kind of 4 or 5 people. And of course, with that comes the typical errors and delays, because us poor humans aren't as perfect as we want to be all the time, perhaps. So what did we do? Well, first we put a pilot together. Actually, we ran a pilot for about 2 months to link into 4 different systems inside Popular Harker. So quite a complex end-to-end process, and essentially managing all of those supplier invoices. And what it meant for the individual contractors and tradespeople was that actually they were getting paid within days instead of within weeks and sometimes months. So it made it a much more efficient process for the organisation, and it made it a much better environment for the tradespeople because, of course, they're getting paid earlier. So what did we do? Well, we used software bots to extract the data from the invoices, place it into these downstream systems, and then we'll talk about it in a moment, but we have a platform called NIA, NexBotix Intelligent Automation Hub, which allows the finance team to manage any exceptions. So perhaps the supplier has put the value wrong on their invoice, that can all be picked up and managed by that team. And what they saw as their results were pretty astounding. Very, very happy client, re-signed a couple of times now with us, and they've seen 100% error reduction. So no more errors into the invoicing process. Of course, the bots can run 24/7, but critical for us was this high rate of throughput. So we monitor the amount of invoices in this case, but it could be transactions, it could be anything that we're putting through the automated solution. There's much of that to go through straight through without any human touch. So for Popular Harker, that was running around 85%. So very, very strong results. And of course, all of a pay-as-you-go solution, which meant that we had a lot of flexibility for them in terms of how they grew and scaled the actual solution. Okay, so what's it like working with us? Well, we do get some pretty good feedback from our customers. Happy to share some of those reference case studies with you alongside the one there from Popular Harker. But in essence, as we said in the earlier slides, from a process perspective, there's lots of opportunity to automate, and particularly around things like lettings and market rent in the housing environment. But any kind of finance, HR, sales, operations-led process, they all lend themselves really well to automation. And we absolutely focus on zero touch processing, as I say, trying to get that straight through processing as high as we possibly can to ensure that there's less for people to do so they can focus on the more interesting and important work. And this is all offered with a fully managed service, so companies don't need the skills internally. You don't need your own developers. You don't need your own people to understand how to automate a process. We do all that for you and seamlessly implement the solution alongside your current business as usual. And as I just mentioned, the pricing is very flexible from a consumption-based perspective, all pay as you go, and we see around about 6 months as a typical return on investment. And on the right there, just a couple of general stats that we see across all customers actually. People talk about OCR and data extraction issues. Well, OCR has moved on massively in the last couple of years. Having the AI assisted component to that means that we see well over 98%. Typically, it's probably more over 99%, but it's very high. And then straight through processing I've covered. But then also we see a huge amount of time reduction. So people are really freed up, move that boring, mundane work away, and are freed up to do more interesting, exciting work. And then generally speaking, again, you're looking around a 50% cost reduction once you're talking about the manual cost to run a process versus the automated cost to run a process. The benefit looks like about 50% of that. So very positive from a business case perspective. And finally, for my little bit here, I'll just touch a bit more on NIA. So NIA is our human in the loop management platform. So quite unique to us as an organization, very outcome focused, very customer focused. And this is the platform where the users, so it might be a finance assistant or an HR manager, the users actually interact with the system to manage any exceptions within the process. There's always going to be exceptions. Exceptions aren't a bad thing. In fact, they're a good thing because it means you can pull out any outliers and fix them before they become a problem downstream. So as well as all the analytics on how the process is performing, how many transactions have been created, and what volume of exceptions are coming through, all those things in terms of analytics, you actually, each individual have their own area where they have their own tasks to go and manage, which you say could be from a simple perspective of some data didn't match, be it a line item or a delivery item or whatever it was on the invoice didn't match, through to an approval where you need somebody more senior to approve an invoice if it's over a certain value. So we have lots of workflows built in to our NIA solution. Okay, I think that's it for me for now. So I'll hand back to Chris to talk about how you might start your automation journey.
Thank you, Chris. So getting started, how do you start your intelligent automation journey? What should you be thinking about when you start developing your first automation strategies? It's a really important consideration. Lots of organizations make the mistake of buying the tech before strategizing how to use it, and it often leads to failure. So the first step you need to take is to identify the relevant automation opportunities in your business. Now, the high-level route that we take begins with the strategic priorities of the business itself. What is your mission? What are you trying to achieve in the next few years? Are there any major blockers? We also need to understand if there are any major system changes that may occur or any planned change management projects that could impede or impact our ability to deploy an automation. There are then operational considerations that we really need to consider in advance. Has a cogent financial risk analysis been done? Are there any governance issues or regulatory compliance issues that we need to be aware of? By doing that, we can start to bear down on the relevant parts of the business we should be focused on, and then we can start to focus in on at a high level on some interesting use cases. And it is at that point that we focus on process metrics. Where are the very high volume manual repetitive processes in your business soaking up lots of time and resource? Once we've established those desirable automation processes, we want to start thinking about where the low-hanging fruit is. So where are the processes that occur in high volumes that are at the lowest level of complexity, have the least amount of systems involved, the lowest amount of process steps, and unconvoluted approvals workflow? And we want to start with that low-hanging fruits because it means we can secure you a very swift and strong return on investment with a very low-cost engagement to prove the utility of the technology. So as we expand, we have that senior stakeholder buy-in, and automating the complex stuff becomes that much easier. And on the next slide, we've listed out some characteristics of an ideal process. So as you can see, it's a lot of the stuff we've already mentioned. It's manual, repetitive processes occurring in high volumes. If you find processes where all of these boxes are ticked, you have the ideal candidate process for automation. But you don't necessarily have to tick every box. It's nice to have digital triggers, but we often work with organizations that still present us with handwritten documents. But when you're doing your analysis internally, this is a really good list for you to use when identifying ideal processes for automation. So we are offering a free discovery session for all of you that have attended this session today. Congratulations. This will include up to 2 hours of workshops, a customized demo of our products, and the development of a high-level business case on 1 or 2 of your business processes. And we've gone into a bit more detail about that on the next slide, please, Chris. So we will essentially set up some virtual workshops with a NexBotix consultant and yourselves, and we'll share some slides with your team to demystify the technology, go into a bit more detail about what we're talking about in terms of an automation engagement, and then we'll start to discuss your business and processes. We'll review your business processes, including any documentation that you may have, establish some metrics to identify 1 or 2 target processes, then we'll analyze those processes in detail and create a business case. And that business case will be extended alongside a proposal which will display the perceived complexity of the project, the total expected costs, your return on investment over 1 to 3 years, and how long until you get a positive ROI, what would be expected from you, how many hours of time from your experts and your project managers, and so on. So this will tell you everything that is involved in an automation engagement and the anticipated value add, which you can use to contextualize your internal discussions around the pursuit of automation projects. And of course, if anybody has any questions about that process, you can reach out to us at any time. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Chris. So we said to keep it nice and punchy for today. So really now, if there's any questions, then we'll be happy to take those. And yeah, hope it's been useful for you.
So I can see there's one question in the chat around our pricing model, if we can go into a little bit more detail on that.
Can we go for that, Chris?
I'd be happy to. So our pricing is broken down into 2 parts. Our professional services costs, which is a one-off fee, and then the ongoing technology costs. Now, the professional services costs refers to the discovery process, the design, build, test, and implementation of your automated solution. The ongoing technology costs refers to the use of our NexBots, which are our bots centered on RPA and AI technology that actually do the work, do the clicks and keystrokes and process the data, and the use of our platform Naya that Chris was talking about a little bit earlier. Now, I think a massive differentiator for us is that we offer our technology on a pay-as-you-go model. So for transactional processes like invoice processing, for example, we would charge per document scanned. And for non-transactional processes, it would be based on bot hours. So it is the fairest and most accessible payment model for this type of technology on the market, as simple as that. Most vendors sell their technology on 1 to 3 year contracts with upfront payments. So you're going to pay for it whether you use it or not. And we thought it would be slightly fairer to put together the pricing model that we have. And we've been very successful as a result. I'm very happy to go into more detail with any of you if you reach out to us directly.
Great, thanks, Chris. It doesn't look like there's any more questions for the moment. So I think with that, we'll finish the session there. But thanks everyone for joining, really appreciate it. Now we'll follow up with you all individually just to give you that free discovery workshop we talked about, which is a really good way to think about your processes and think about how you can get started. So yeah, thanks for your time, thanks for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next session. Okay, bye for now.